Hello, everybody. I think I've got my microphone going. I think it's working. I can see the bar down below, so that's good. Anyway, hi, how are you? Hope you're doing well, wherever you are in the world. I feel like I'm coming across a bit extra hyper this afternoon. Just getting things, making sure that things are working, and quite excited that they are, which is always a good thing. If you saw my notification on Instagram, if you saw my post on Instagram, the first picture was great. It was the spring flowers that always come up at the beginning of winter at our house. I don't know why. I think maybe that particular variety are meant to be winter flowers, not spring flowers. I don't know. It really confuses me every year and amuses me. But the other two pictures that came with it, one was my thumb up close, this one here, with some bruise cream on it, a great pile of bruise cream, and the other one was a shot showing it. I'll see if I can show it to you close up here. See that dark bit down there at the bottom of my fingernail? That's not a shadow. That's the equivalent, I suppose, of a blood blister underneath my thumbnail because I jammed my thumb in the drawer yesterday. Ow, really ow. I was jumping up and down and waving my hand around until I remembered I had to put bruise cream on it. Anyway, just one of those random things that happens. So yeah, the fact that we've got the stream working, we've got the microphone working, all of those things are all positives. Yeah. I've got meat in the fridge for being able to cook dinner tonight. I still have milk for making coffee. They're all positives too. Anyway, so I hope it's going well for you wherever you are. If you're in New Zealand, I hope you're not too cold with the more wintry sorry, my hair is bothering me. More wintry temperatures at the moment. I hope you're living in somewhere that's insulated enough to not get too cold and hopefully has a little bit of heating available. Yeah, sorry, itchy eye. I know, I should try and get this sorted out beforehand. But there we go. Done, I think. Right. Stream is working. Camera is working, microphone is working, and I'm guessing it is because I can see the soundbar going up and down. My captions are working, I think. I'm pretty sure that one of my things doesn't show them for me. I don't know if it shows it for everybody else. It's just one of those things. I'll just turn that one on and see if that works. I thought captions were meant to be working. I'm not seeing them on my other screen. Let's have a look on my phone. Yeah, captions are showing on my phone. It must just be my browser settings. That's right, doesn't matter. It's kind of working. Right, here we go. Here's a link. No, here's a text block for you. Hi. I'll read its script. Welcome and thanks for being here. Feel free to chat or lurk as much as you like. I love having you here because I'm reading a book. I will chat with you between chapters. You are welcome to chat with each other though, so you don't have to wait for me to stop reading to be able to chat. If there's anyone else in chat, you're welcome to chat with them. I did remember to turn on chat. That was another thing I was meant to be doing, which I did. So that's good. I'll just put that back to where it was and have a look back over on the page I'm meant to be on. And yes, it shows that it's not subscribers only or emotes only, so that's good. A good starting point is sharing what your favourite old-fashioned story was while growing up. There you go. That's a good way to introduce yourself to somebody. Ask them what their favourite story was. And yeah, it's quite normal to have a whole bunch of them and not be able to pick one, but just ask them to tell you about one of their favourite stories. It's a great way to get to know people. What else? I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of other stuff. I see that one of my mods has been doing some bot crushing for me, so that's wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan. I hope it gets better soon too. The bruise cream is helping. If you're a New Zealander, you may be familiar with the brand. It's called Nature's Best, and it comes in a little purple pot. It's a white cream. I like that one because it smells of peppermint, and the cream, even though it kind of feels slightly greasy, it's not heavily greasy, but it also doesn't leave grease stains or other different ingredient stains on your clothing. If you happen to get some on it, it washes out okay. So I'm just trying to remember to slather it on every time I come across a bruise. Oh, you're most welcome. I hope you were able to find some results from that, or something amusing at least, even if it isn't specifically useful. So Jonathan's saying thank you for the song advice. Jonathan reads Elizabethan letters and documents, like court documents and things like this. He's putting together a game that is based on historic documents, and it's about the reign of Elizabeth I and Mary, Queen of Scots, and the different people in the courts and the different people holding positions of office in the country and all sorts of things like this. This is my understanding of it anyway. Maybe. I think I've got it right. Anyway, so every now and then, because he's reading documents that actually are original old documents, well, copies of original old documents, they use old words. I was going to say Old English, but Old English is a technical term and I'm not using it technically here. The form of English that they use is a little bit different to the way we use it these days. If you've ever read Shakespeare that has not been rewritten into modern English words, even if it does still sound like it's old style Shakespeare, if you've read anything that's actually in an earlier version of English, the way Shakespeare wrote it, you will know what I'm talking about. The way the words were written is quite different to how they are now, and sometimes you pick them up better by reading them out loud, because you are reading the representations of sounds that the letters that make up a word have in them, and you hear it and you go, oh, that's such and such a word. It's just I wouldn't have thought of writing it that way. Things like that. But then you come across other things where, well, Jonathan comes across other things, like there's a record of someone being arrested because of some misdemeanors or misbehaviours in a church, amongst which was this reference to something which we were puzzling over, trying to figure out what it was, because it's not a word or a phrase that we can find anywhere except for this one arrest warrant. But because language changes, it morphs, it reshapes itself, it reforms itself over time and usage. One of the things that I've learnt to do, I'm pretty sure that Jonathan does the same thing too. Hi David, great, thank you for coming, thank you for raiding, it's wonderful to have you here. And I did see that you had followed me, that was wonderful too, sorry for interrupting. But it's so good to have you here. And Aaron L too, fabulous. I'll give you guys a shout out in a minute. I'll just finish off what I'm explaining about what Jonathan does. So language shifts, language morphs the way we use it, and so sometimes you'll come across a word or a phrase that has a part in it that you think might be slightly familiar, and so you look up that part of it and see if you can find in some of the older English-based dictionaries, not American-based dictionaries, because they are more rooted in the background of English language, especially if they give you in etymology, not entomology. Entomology is insects, etymology is words. They give you where words have come from. Sometimes you can track what a word has, what the word used to be, because you're going backwards through the steps. So part of this phrase that Jonathan was looking up seemed to, in an old usage, be spelled slightly differently, and it implied something. And because of the context of the phrase, of the sentence that it was in, to do with this chap having been taken to court or arrested or whatever, it sounded like he had been singing a rather rude song in church after having got drunk or something like that. So Jonathan's been having a lot of fun trying to find out a little bit more about it. It turns out I think that it was a song about somebody and a dung cart or a night cart. In cities, they used to take the waste, the human waste, away from people's houses at night, and it was called A Night Cart, and he was singing a song about that in church, apparently, maybe, as a possibility. Anyway, so so thanks everybody for raiding. That's wonderful that you're all here. David and Arinel, sorry, I'm just looking sideways to make sure I get names correct. Yeah, very, very funny. But in that day and age, that would have been sacrilegious and, yes, an arrestable offence, I would imagine. So David and Arinel are both readers in Codex, which some of you will have heard of before, but I'm going to explain it again anyway. So if you are watching on Twitch, you will see on the bottom right-hand corner of my screen an image that says Codex and then my name, my screen name on it. And Codex is a group of people who read public domain books online on Twitch specifically. We do other things as well on Twitch, but the thing that we have in common is we read public domain books. So both Arinel and David, whose screen name is David Air on the Air, at the moment in my chat, that's what it looks like. David Air on the Air are both readers in Codex. Now, if you are wanting to go and find out specifically what they've just been doing or anything like that, if you look below my About Me section on my About page on Twitch, there's a section there that has also got Codex written on it, not quite the same look to it. It's more in uniform with the rest of my panels, but there's a list of links there. It's alphabetical order of the different members of Codex who read on Twitch, and those are all links to their Twitch channels. So please open them up in another browser tab, or open them up and save them for looking at later or something like that, and give them a follow, read up about what they say about themselves, what they're doing. Oh, lovely. Thank you, Arinel, for explaining that. So David is reading Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte at the moment. I'm guessing that Arinel has been listening in, so that's wonderful. It would be good. It would be really good. I haven't actually managed to catch one of David's readings yet. We just had book club. That's another aspect of Codex. I'm going to give you my link to the Codex Discord server. Yes, that one worked. Yay. And I will give you specifically the links for the others. So the David and Arinel. I just need to copy something because I'm terrible at typing things out. Ooh. Sorry. And thank you also for hosting me, David. That's wonderful. I really appreciate that. So most of our Codex readers read books that are written for adults. Not adult themed books, but just books that are written that appeal to adults rather than children. As far as I know, I'm the only one of our Codex readers who specifically reads just children's books. That's neither here nor there. That just happens to be what I do. Mainly because I have such lovely memories of reading that sort of thing when I was growing up. So there you go. I've given a shout out to both David and Arinel because they're here and they're part of Codex, and I'm quite excited about that. And I'm also going to give Jonathan a shout out, so you've got a link for him without having to click through anywhere else to try and find it, because I love what he's doing. There's a few times I've actually caught him, I think in the evening, isn't it, Jonathan? He's been reading in the evening and just been reading through some of this text on Twitch, and sometimes there'll be a word that's really strange, or I will be familiar with a word just because of my background in reading lots of old books, because I grew up reading old kids books and old adults books as well, and so sometimes I will offer a slightly different slant on pronunciation or what I think that the word might mean, which is why it was quite cool to actually be able to discuss a word that we were a phrase that we were finding rather amusing, but there seemed to be no other reference to. The Night Cart song one. It sounds like a drunken song, a pub song. possibly a little bit rude about somebody too. Yeah, no, I'm not going to get into that here since this is a family-friendly channel. When you start chatting here, you will have found that it expects you to agree to certain standards of behavior. So generally in my channel you won't get bad language, you won't get anything particularly violent going on, although sometimes there will be a little bit of attitudes that we don't consider to be okay these days, but they were at the time that the books that I was reading were written. But generally speaking, there won't be nothing particularly overt in the way of suggestive behaviors and things like that. If I'm reading something out and you find it a little bit dodgy, a little bit blue even, I'm trying to use family-friendly terminology. Assume it is that what has been said is in the most innocent possible way of meaning it, because that's usually how it is written for the era that these books are written. They don't usually intend anything particularly rugged in the books that I'm reading, just because they're not that sort of books, because they are written for children, and they were written for children 100 years ago, maybe, something like that. I love being able to share who everybody is and what they're doing, so that's great. Sorry about that, David. It's just I've got for those of you who are streamers, take care of your audience. I've actually had people who came into my stream. This is quite a while ago now, probably a year ago now, just coming in and being very inappropriate. And so I've had to put some rather stringent systems in place so that the community that we have here is something where grannies with their grandkids can quite safely come and listen to stories that the grannies remember when they were kids. I want everybody to be able to listen, but I want them as well to be able to listen, not just people who are okay with some of the more rugged stuff that goes on. So yes, I have in place a system where you can chat once you've been following me for 10 minutes. It used to be 30 minutes, but 10 minutes I figured was probably enough. It also means that some of the chat bots that automatically just start loading chat information in that is inappropriate or with dodgy links and that sort of stuff, usually they expect to be able to submit that information straight away, and then once they can't, they go. So it's all part of the safety measures I've got in place. I don't remember, David, if I have actually been to, I'm assuming I'm allowed to call you David, is that okay? I don't remember if I have actually been to your stream while you were live, or if I have visited your Twitch channel and looked at some of your videos. I've intended to, and I do chat sometimes with people on the Codex Discord, but intentionally, I actually don't know. I'm sorry. I do intend to get there, but often it just sort of it's like, oh, there's so much going on in my head. Basically, I work from home full time for the business that we run from our home. I know this is a lot of extra information, but eventually we'll get to the story. It's okay. I don't do other things like playing lots of games. And once I start reading, I will actually give you a jigsaw puzzle if you would like to play that collaboratively, just to keep your hands happy. So let's talk about community again. Sorry, I got very distracted. I have ADHD and also autism, so I tend to get very easily distracted. Attention deficit, shiny. Does that sound familiar? I can get myself lost in a sentence when I'm reading it out loud to you and my eyes are actually on the words on the page. I can be halfway through a sentence and lose where I am on the page. That's a special skill. In addition to that, I tend to deep dive into information about things. So sometimes we will actually have, we'll have a decent amount of reading, but we'll also get all this extra information because of stuff that's firing off in my brain about things that I know of, or something that intrigues me that I want to find out more about. Sorry, my feet are getting hot. I'm just taking my slippers off and my extra jersey. Once I start talking, I do start to warm up. It's been quite cold up here. I say up here because I'm in the northern part of New Zealand. I think Jonathan's in Christchurch. Did I get that right this time? Not meaning to dox you or anything like that, but just a different part of New Zealand. New Zealand is a long, skinny country, and so therefore, and it roughly oriented its north-south. So long, skinny country, which means that the northern part of it is a lot closer to the equator. The southern part of it is a lot closer to Antarctica. Our climate has quite a lot of diversity when it comes to temperature extremes. Not as extreme as some other countries, but considering our landmass, it's pretty different. But fairly much modified by the oceans around us, because we have 1,000 miles of ocean, whichever direction you go. Right. Yes, I've forgotten too, David, so don't worry about it. But I will make it at some stage. I will. What time zone are you? Are you able to tell me, David? That would be great, because then, if you can, because then it might help me to actually fit in visiting your stream. And just as a general thing, I'm assembling a list of appropriate channels to auto-host, but I don't tend to I haven't done any hosting or raids yet, just because, as I said earlier on, the whole target of what's appropriate, what's not for my audience needs to be stuff that's totally suitable for grannies and their kids. I want them to learn that the internet can be a fun, friendly, helpful place, not just a scary place where you've got to guard against wolves and woodcutters and dragons and rude people and those who are going to do nasty things to you. I want them to actually know that they can use the internet and it can be a friendly, safe place. And so because of that, I don't auto-host and I don't raid, because as far as I can tell, I'm one of the few streamers who doesn't actually do games as well as the main thing I do, which is reading. You're on the east coast of the US. It's 11:20 in the evening at the moment. Wow, goodness me. That's worth knowing. Thanks, Jonathan. Jonathan thinks that the auto-host system isn't functioning properly at the moment, so that's all right. But I'm happy to say, go and have a look at the links that are down below on my About page and make your own decision about who you want to watch, rather than me putting it in your face and saying, this is where we're going next. I mean, I love auto-hosting. I love being on someone's channel and then we all go across and raiding, but also auto-hosting, where I go and get to know somebody, but because of who else they also auto-host, I get to know a little bit more about what their own tastes are, the sort of things that they like interacting with, and that's all part of me curating the sense of community I have here, is figuring out how to develop the texture of what we've got going on here, and what other inputs we have that are appropriate or otherwise, and making decisions based on that. It's part of being a grown-up, I suppose, taking responsibility for yourself and also what you put out for others. There you go. So if you're new here, hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books, such as this one here. See, does that look old to you? It is. That one was published in 1924 or 1926, I think. I've got another one here that's even older. I'm just digging it out so I can show it to you. This one's in much better nick, in much better condition, just because it probably hasn't been read anywhere near as many times, and it's probably made out of slightly better paper too, actually. This one was given to my great uncle, my grandmother's brother, in 1897, more than 100 years old. So it's a little kid's book. This particular era, the late 1800s, children's stories tend to be a lot more moralistic, teaching children how they ought to behave. Oh well, yeah, we will actually end up reading a few of those sort of books along the way, but I don't want to just read those books. I want to have some stuff. A lot of the ones we've read up until now have had a little bit of mischief in them as well, but not in a bad way. So this one here, it was a Sunday school prize. This is the style of illustration you tend to see in some of the much older books. And it's done as an etching that is then made into a printing plate, which is where you rub the ink on the metal or the stone, and the ink goes into the grooves, and you wipe off the excess, and then you put it in on a printing bed, put the paper on top, or the other way around, but usually with an illustration page, you put the paper on top, put it into a press, and then squeeze it so hard that you can actually feel the texture of where the print has been pushed into the page to pick up the ink. When you run your finger up and down the page, I can feel it. It's quite amusing. It's quite intriguing. But it's also a great way to sort of see how we saw the world back then. And that's a big part of why I like reading old children's books. Yes, because I'm introducing myself and I'm just remembering what it is I'm doing. What else about old books? Yeah, I read books that my parents read and my grandparents read. In fact, often they literally are books that my parents and my grandparents read, ones that they were given. When I don't have a physical book that I can read, I actually read from an old iPad mini, first generation iPad mini, that was a hand-me-down bit of technology for me, which I love. It will still go online and download books for me, and it will still display them for me so I can read them. But that's about all you can do with it because it's so old. I like being able to keep some things working. And have them being very useful for a particular purpose is great, instead of just throw everything away after you've had it for 10 minutes and you're bored with it. It doesn't really appeal to me. Old books, yes. Who I am. I live in New Zealand, on the bottom end of the world, not the top end of the world. We're balancing everybody else. Oh yes, Jonathan, yes, I must remember that. Sorry, my eyes are all blah, blah. Hi, how are you? Great to have you here. Sorry, itchy nose. I'm getting there. I'm going to just give you my quick intro hi thing here without talking about it all again. This is the general blurb that I've put in the chat for you. The real salties, is it? I hope I got that right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for I'm guessing that you're follow. Yes, you are. Wonderful. And so is Mary B Music. That's fabulous. Thank you everybody for following and being part of what's going on. So yeah, I'm Jev. I live in New Zealand. I read old children's books. Why? Because they're there. In our house they are. And also because they're the books that I grew up reading and I thoroughly enjoyed them. I read a lot more new books as well that we had at the school library, ones that people had passed on to me or gave me as gifts, things like that. I don't know if anyone remembers reading Encyclopedia Brown or Charlotte's Web or anything like that. I grew up with all the normal things at the time too. But my awareness of the world outside myself was much, much broader because of the fact that I was reading these old books that were written in other countries and were written so long ago that even though the people were writing what for them was a contemporary book, it was now very old-fashioned. And so therefore it helped me to actually understand that where we live now isn't everything. It's part of a continuity that started way back and it carries on ahead of us. our kids are going to be in there, our grandkids or our nieces and nephews or other people, younger people, are going to be there when we aren't around to be part of it. Reading on Twitch is really up to you. I would suggest that you only read public domain books though, so you don't get takedowns, so you don't get legal challenges from copyright holders. All worth keeping in mind. Especially if they are very popular books, you are likely to not only get a takedown notice, you're actually likely to be dealt with legally. Copyright holders for books are a little bit like copyright holders for movies. The publishers are quite defensive of their intellectual properties that they have the right to guard, and so therefore it's not something I do. I tend not to read books that are outside of public, that are still within copyright. Public domain means that the copyright for it, the legal right of ownership of the work, which means that the author has the right to be paid for it, has expired because either the publication is over a certain age or the author has been dead more than a certain amount of time. And that is decided by the country that the author published the books in. And there's a really wide variety of rules on that. And yes, David has just given the explanation about the great website called Project Gutenberg, and I'm just going to give you the link for it. Project Gutenberg is a site that hosts books that are in the public domain. Children's books are there, but also adults' books, and they're not just fiction books, there are also non-fiction books. There are books that are public domain where the author is still alive, but that's because they have released the book to be able to be used by the general public without any copyright claim against them. I have read a book that is a current book. It is still within copyright, but I have the specific permission from the publishers that I was allowed to read it on Twitch as a live thing, and people could watch it for the next 2 weeks afterwards. I think it's still on my Twitch page, but I also have they have given me permission to put it up on YouTube, but only to share the link rather than actually having it publicly available. So if anyone wants to watch that one, that's the one called The Seven Kites of Matariki. I read the book, but I also did a lot of explaining about Māori culture and the time of year that is Matariki, which is the Maori observance of New Year, and the star cluster that the Maori call Matariki is known elsewhere as Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters, or Subaru, depending on where you come from. Sorry about that, Mary. The part of the difficulty. Part of the system that I have to prevent people causing problems, because yes, this is something I have had problems with before. If you go with a lot less emotes, it won't get blocked, what you were saying. So yeah, give it a go without so many emotes and emoji, and then you should be able to post whatever it was that you were posting before. It's just one of those auto mod things that are set up on my Twitch channel. Unfortunately, I had to do it because I had a whole bunch of really nasty stuff happening over the course of several days when I was reading 2 years ago. And so since then I've got some fairly strong filters in place, but also some auto mod stuff that happens. So not that I'm asking you to work your way around it, but just if you understand how it works. So if you use, I don't know what the numbers are, but if you use lots of emotes in one comment, or if you use lots and lots of capital letters or lots and lots of symbols and stuff like that, those are automatically not going to get posted in the chat. But if you can find another way to say it, but it's okay to say, you're not saying anything that's dodgy, find another way to say it. You can use emotes, just don't use lots and lots of them in one go. And that's just basically the way it works. Right, trying to think. I've told you about Project Gutenberg, and thank you, David, for actually mentioning that. That's great. And hopefully, yes, wherever you are in the world at the moment, it's probably best to check what the copyright rules are for your country. There will be information about that. Each country is different, and you really need to go by what's appropriate there. The rule of thumb for most places, if you're not sure, is it's probably something like, if the author has been dead for 70 years, it may be in the public domain, but you need to check that for yourself. You need to decide what legal risk you're prepared to take. Anyway, so here we are. And yes, Jonathan, I'm going to say it. I always say that. Oh, I think I always say it. So if you're new here, I have 3 tips for you. 3 tips. First tip is drinks. So I've got a bottle of water here. I always have water with me because it's great for keeping your brain and your body working well. I actually usually sip from this. That's also water. But for waving it around at the screen without getting water everywhere, and so you can hear it because it sloshes, I use my water bottle. So tip 1 is drinks. Tip 2 is snacks. And today's snack of choice is speculaas, which is Dutch spiced biscuits. Mainly cinnamon. Yummy. And I can get them, I used to be able to get them from my local supermarket. Now I have to get them from our local bin inn, which is it's like a supermarket, but you can get things in bulk. Put it into containers yourself. And then the third tip is comfortable. This is my cushion to remind me. You need somewhere comfortable to sit when you're listening. Unless, of course, you have to work. If you find a recipe for them that works well, let me know. I would love to be able to make them. They're for anyone not familiar, they're not very thick. I'm in New Zealand, so these are called biscuits, not cookies. Cookies we know what cookies are, but cookies, the implication is that they're thicker and a bit more chewy and stuff. But anyway, these snack things that are sweet, regardless of what size they are called biscuits in New Zealand. And what you call in North America a biscuit is actually a scone. Just because it is. We came from England too, you know. Our English comes from England more than it comes from North America. So, thin, crispy, yummy, lots of cinnamon, and a bit sweet. I was going to wave something. Oh, yeah, and if you've got a streaming buddy or a reading buddy that can sit with you so you can enjoy listening, then great. And this is Quest Sprout. He's a physical characterization of a comic character whom the BBC deemed in, I think it was 2020, the most wholesome thing on the internet that the world needs now. Right when we're in the middle of the whole COVID pandemic, lockdowns everywhere and all that sort of stuff, in the early stages of it, Quest Sprout was doing really well. And you can see that shape that's up against my hands, that's actually 2 little wee leaves on top of his head, or its head. I always think of Quest Sprout as a he. It comes from another New Zealander who does comics, Swords Comic it's called, and most of the other characters are a little bit more bloodthirsty than Quest Sprout. All he ever says is Quest, and it's written Quwest when he says it. But his name is Quest Sprout, Quest Sprout. My reading buddy. He's lovely. He's very sweet. If it makes you feel more comfortable to have a reading buddy, even if it's a squishy of some sort, or a nice blanket to snuggle under if you're in cold climate, or a hammock that you can lie back and get a nice breeze drifting past you if you're in a warm climate at the moment, by all means do so. I'm fine with you being in lurk mode. You can actually use that as a command and it will just tell me that you are lurking if you're happy for me to say hi to you when you say it. If you want to lurk anonymously, then don't tell me that that's what you're doing, okay? But lurk mode, the command is !lurk, L-U-R-K, no spaces, no capitals, and it will just sort of say that you are now lurking, just so I know, or so the others know in case you want us to know. I do have people who use me reading and chatting away while they're doing homework, writing up projects, assignments for university or technical college. and also people who are working, actually doing jobs, and they're doing something which requires their hands and their physical presence, but they need something to engage their brain with. And so I'm quite happy for you to do any of those sorts of things. Housework's another great one. I listen to audiobooks when I'm doing sewing projects. I make these little calico bags for one of the projects that one of the products that my husband makes out of wood, that we send around New Zealand. And so if I am doing some of that, I will put an audiobook on, or I'll listen to somebody if they're streaming and reading at the same time as what I'm working. And that's a lot of the sort of thing that I expect people to be doing with me reading. And so go for it. This is not serious study time that I'm doing that I will be testing you on afterwards to give you a pass or a fail. None of that round here. I do occasionally get words wrong. Yes, I got the command right. Yay. So occasionally I will read out a word which I will say in a completely different way to what you expect, because I learned it from reading it off a page. I didn't learn it off somebody in a classroom or something like that. It's one of the joys of being an avid reader. So I will say it differently to you, maybe. And I may actually say it completely differently again later on in the same chapter. That's just the way it works. And I've already told you about the ADHD and autism, where I get deep dives into information, but I can also get totally lost on the page, which is all part of the fun of it, actually. So the book we are currently, getting my chair comfortable again. The book we're currently reading is The Dream Girl's Garden by Edith Howes. Now, this book is actually written by a New Zealand author, which is quite unusual because we don't have a lot of old books for children in New Zealand. There's more of those in Australia, but then they have a bigger population than us anyway. So this one was written by a lady who had been a teacher, and she was quite revolutionary in New Zealand education because she agreed with Maria Montessori's idea that children need to learn from what goes on around them. And so some of the books that she wrote, some of the children's books she wrote, she was actually explaining things scientifically, but still using children's imaginative language. So there were fairies, there were elves, there were all these flowers could talk and all that sort of stuff as the story, and yet she was also scientifically explaining things. There's one of her books is called The Cradle Ship, and it's about how babies are made without it actually being rude or being banned. That's quite an achievement. It's actually not one that I've read for a very long time. I don't know if I will be reading it on stream or not. It's not very big. But her books, because New Zealand population is very small, we don't have a big financial incentive to be able to put public domain books online, unlike the resource of Europe and North America, where there is a much more dense population. More of those books have been digitized and made available online, but the New Zealand ones haven't, just because nobody knows about them, nobody's interested. So once we lose the actual physical books, they're going to be gone because nobody has digitized them, and nobody's paying to have them digitized because somebody's got to pay for that time. Anyway, so hopefully somebody will, but in the meantime I'm just going to read them when I find them, if I can. I have boxes of books downstairs. Hopefully I will actually be able to unpack them and find some of the other old ones. Hopefully they're not all just sort of middling ones that have just been sold from the library. I don't know. I can't remember. They've been in boxes too long. But how about I read? So, Dream Girl's Garden by Edith Howes. This one we do not have any chapter numbers. We just have chapter names, and so I'm not even going to guess at how far through we are, except that it looks like not halfway, but over a third, whatever that means. And I'll give you a jigsaw puzzle. I need to find the link. I had it before. I did say I was going to, remember? Let's see if I can do that for you now. And I need to make it visible, and then I need to hit the interact button, which will give me a pop-up, and I will give you the invite for it very shortly. I'm going to leave that at it's 108 pieces. That's about what we've had recently that people have been happy to puzzle on. You don't have to do these puzzles, by the way, just if you would like to. You're most welcome to. And I'm going to give you the link in chat for that now. Here you go. You click on the link, it'll open up in another browser window for you. You can play that while you're listening, and we will see what's going on up here. There you go. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you've missed out on a whole lot of stuff that's happening in the chat over there on Twitch. I edit them down so it's just the video window, so you're also missing out on playing jigsaw puzzles with us. And if you really want to do that sort of thing, then I suggest that you come over to my Twitch channel and listen in when I'm live. Then you can interact too. Otherwise, you can just leave me nice, encouraging comments on YouTube. I do appreciate that. Right, here we go. I'm going to read The Dream Girl's Garden by Edith Howes, and we are reading the chapter called The Dream Girl's Flight. Ooh, intriguing. The dream girl longed to fly. That was her greatest wish in the world. She used to watch the birds and butterflies as they sailed so easily along, and she would lift her arms and leap high in the air and try to stay there. But she always came down bump on the ground at the end of the leap. Never once did she manage to remain afloat. Do you remember those dreams of wanting to be able to fly? Oh, I remember that so strongly. I think that was partly why I identified with this book so strongly when I was growing up. At night, however, she seemed in her dreams to fly for hours. She floated down the stairs without ever touching them. She floated low over the grass and flowers, high over the trees and houses, higher still among the clouds and stars. These glorious dreams seemed so real at times that even after she was awake, it was hard to believe. Sorry, turn the page. Trying to find it. Because these pages are sort of fluffy on the edge, and you've got to work to separate them sometimes. Even after she was awake, it was hard to believe that she had not been actually flying. If only she could. Prickletop watched her trying to keep afloat in the garden. Prickletop's one of the fairies that live in her garden. And she actually can see them sometimes and does actually talk with them. That's part of the way the story works. Prickletop watched her trying to keep afloat in the garden. It was a morning after one of her dreams, and the wind was blowing hard. She came running down the lawn with her arms outspread, took a long leap, ran on again on tiptoe, took another long leap. For a moment, the strength of the wind kept her in the air, or at least it felt like it. It seemed as if she might stay afloat. Then down she came again to the earth. Disappointing. I know that feel. She stood still, her face long with disappointment. It was only a dream again, she said aloud. I thought it was real this time. It felt real. She sat down and slapped her feet. Silly things, why won't you stay off the ground? She asked. Prickletop had always felt sorry about the trick he had played on Dream Girl when he made the tissue paper teacher. They got very worried. They had been joking with their teacher, the lady, her aunt, who used to teach her. They used to hug her so tightly, and one of the jokes that she and her friend used to say was, what say we squeeze you so hard, we hug you so tight that you turn into a tissue paper teacher. And Prickletop had got some friends together, and they had magicked up an image of the teacher that was really thin, like tissue paper, where you could see light through her. And then suddenly the girls had panicked because, oh no, they had squished their teacher so hard that she had become tissue paper. How could they undo it? And then Prickletop had to go and find somebody to help fix the situation. Turns out that the teacher was asleep in the chair behind. They'd made her go to sleep, so she wasn't aware. But yes, he did feel bad about the fact that Dream Girl had got so worried about teacher and what she had done. He had made her miserable then. Now he thought, perhaps I could make her happy. He went round the other fairies in the garden. The Dream Girl is longing to fly. Can't we help her? He said to each, and presently he had them all gathered together to talk things over and see what could be done. Excuse me. Mortals can't fly, that's all about it, said Nim. Nim's the one who can be a little bit nasty. We've got to keep an eye out for him. They're far too big and heavy. Besides, who wants them to fly? Why should they be made equal to us? The idea is ridiculous, and I, for one, shall have nothing to do with it. And off he went to tease a nest full of baby birds whose mother was busy finding their food. Not a very nice fairy, is he? The fairies were all glad he had gone. They drew more closely together and began to talk freely. Mortals are certainly big and heavy, but surely we can find a way, said Fairy Fidelity. We must make a big magic. That is the first thing to do. Dreamaway looked doubtful. I'm not so sure about that, she said. Prickletop and Flute and Swift made magic and couldn't undo it again. It would be dreadful if we made the dream girl fly and then couldn't stop her. Why, she might go on flying till she died of fear and weariness without ever being able to come down to her home again. That's a thought. That is true, said Bluebell. After all, we are only child fairies, and magic is a powerful thing. Wouldn't it be better to ask a grown-up fairy what to do? Grown-ups are so wise. So Dream Girl's Garden is one of the places where the young fairies, the child fairies, spend their time. And as they get older, and they get older because they go through intense feelings like sadness and anger and things like this, and they start doubting things, and that's how they age. Then they move out of Dream Girl's Garden and other places like that and have other roles, which we've learnt about earlier in the book. So if you're wanting to find out some more about the story, you might want to start at the beginning, in which case you can go to my YouTube channel. I'm talking to obviously everybody on Twitch, not YouTube. And look for the playlist called The Dream Girl's Garden. So the link I've just given you in chat. Oh, I don't know if that one's going to work actually. If that doesn't work, then when you're on YouTube, in the middle of trying to get my channel name changed to the same as what I have here, which is jevvv, and apparently it takes a little bit of time. So if that link that I gave you doesn't take you to my YouTube channel, if it says can't be found, then type in jevvv, J-E-V-V-V. There are 3 V's, and then NZ for New Zealand, and do a search, and it will find either videos that I've put up or it'll find my channel, because the actual name of the channel is jevvv, but the link for it may or may not work. I don't know. I'm sorry about that. Hopefully we'll get that sorted soon, but it might take a couple of weeks, and it was only last week that I started the process. Anyway, so if you want to catch the beginning of the story, I'm pretty sure it's about to go up on YouTube. Otherwise, it may still be here on Twitch. I tend to leave them up for the full 2 weeks on Twitch, and then sometime in the last week they go across to YouTube. But there's other stories that I've already done over there as well, except for the one that's not available in public, in which case you have to find me and message me, and I will give you a link for that one. So message me either on Twitch. No, I may not see it on Twitch. Instagram or Twitter are the 2 best places for messaging me directly, and I will send you the link for the Matariki book and all the extra information, some activity links that I've put on my Discord server. That's the other place, is join the Discord server. It's on there. I'll carry on with reading this one. That's true, said Bluebell. After all, we are only child fairies, and magic is a powerful thing. Wouldn't it be better to ask a grown-up fairy what to do? Grown-ups are so wise. Of course, there was a shout of, the gentlest one. So the gentlest one is the adult fairy who looks after the baby fairies. I think that they call them in this story fairykins. I'm not sure. And so she's the one who has the role of being effectively a mother to the really young ones, and seems to be the wisest of all of them. And she's quite a lot older than these ones. So, of course, there was a shout of the gentlest one, and everybody rose up into the air and set off at once for the garden, where it was always spring, which is how they always describe where the gentlest one is, the garden that she's in. Passing over the first trees of the wood, they saw Nim teasing the baby birds and laughing at their distress. "Nim is being cruel again," exclaimed Perlican. They all swooped down on him and seized him by the arms and legs and wings and held him till the mother bird returned and covered her little ones from harm. Then they let him go, and he jeered at them as they flew off. "Poor silly things," he shouted. "Think you'll make a mortal fly? Ho, 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 poor silly things." Dreamaway began to look rather doubtful. "I wonder if we are sillies," she said. "I wonder if it is any good going on." Prickletop said, "Of course it is. I am going on anyway. It can't do any harm to ask the gentlest one, and Nim may yet see a mortal flying in spite of his jeers." Soon they were telling the gentlest one all about it. "Take no notice of Nim," she said. "The dream girl may fly once and again, though only for a few hours at a time. Bring me breadth and strength from the wings of the swan, swiftness and grace from the wings of the swallow, and glowing colours from the wings of the butterfly. Then I will make magic, and you shall help me." Oh, so she's got a lovely solution to this. Joyfully the fairies set out. They went to the swan for breadth and strength, to the swallow for swiftness and grace, and to the butterfly for glowing colours. And these things were lent gladly, that a little mortal might for a few hours know the joy of flight. When they brought them to the gentlest one, she made magic, and they helped her. Soon a pair of the loveliest wings that ever were seen lay at the gentlest one's feet. She picked them up. "When the dream girl lies asleep tonight, you shall fasten them to her shoulders with a spell," she told the eager fairies. "Because they are magic wings, she will be able to fly at once. But where will you take her, that her hours of flight may be well filled?" "That's a good question." "Let us take her to the Valley of Delight," said Perlican. "The dream girl loves beauty more than anything in the world. I saw her yesterday bending over a morning glory, and her face was radiant with joy. She had never seen a morning glory before. She gazed at its petals of heavenly blue, with their veinings of silver and lilac, and the fine mist of dew that lay like pearls about its throat, and her lips trembled with a pleasure that was almost pain. Her eyes were wide, and her cheeks aglow like poppies." Now, just a little explanation here for those who are fairly new to my channel. Often I have read the book before, but I have not read it recently before. So, like for this one here, I haven't prepared ahead of time. Matariki's the only one I have. But normally I haven't prepared ahead of time anything other than the illustrations that may be in the book that I'm reading. So I will do something, sometimes I will pause and find a picture to be able to share with you, just because sometimes people don't actually know the things that are being referenced in a book. So I am going to find a picture for you of morning glory flowers so that you can look at them and go, that's what they're talking about, because flowers in this book are really quite an essential part of the story. I'm just trying to find the one that's going to show you the best what they are like. They really are quite lovely, except that we don't have them in New Zealand. Where possible, we don't have them in New Zealand because they can be invasive. New Zealand is one of these places where the climate, especially the part of New Zealand I'm in, the climate, the amount of rain we get, the amount of sunshine that we have, all of those things lend themselves to plants and animals thriving to the point where they become a problem, a serious problem. We had one of the, I'm just going to save this image for you. We had one of the early governors of New Zealand bought the island across the water from where I am. Where I live is family land. There are other houses in the area as well. It's like a little suburb out by the sea. And as part of that, where we live, you go down the hill, down the slope of the hill of the land that we're on, the general area that we're in, not our own property. We're only on a normal section. Go down the hill, and then there's the beach with rocks and shells. It's not a fantastic bathing beach or anything like that. It's just a tatty little rough beach. And then across the water from us, it's quite an enclosure. It's almost like a lake, except that it's seawater, and we have the space is formed because there's an island that sort of encloses that other side, and then there's a gap at the north and the south ends. And so that area is called Kowal Bay, which is what I tag as a location when I'm when I'm posting on Instagram, Kowal Bay. And this chap, who was governor in the 1800s, bought Kowal Island, which is why it's called Kowal Bay, is because of the island. And so he bought this island, and he set himself, this was after he'd retired, he set himself up a little zoo. He was English. He had been governor in South Africa and Southern Africa. It wasn't a separate country then. Southern Africa, Australia, part of Australia, and New Zealand. And a couple of those he'd done it several times, not just once. And he had spent a lot of time outside of England. He loved being in New Zealand. And one of the things that he wanted to do was have himself a little reminder of what what other parts of the world were like, places that he had lived, places that he had worked, places he had travelled in. And so he had set up this zoo with animals from different places. So he had lived in Australia, I told you that. So some of the animals he brought to New Zealand were, I'm just looking at this to see if it's going to show well. Some of the animals he brought to New Zealand were wallabies. You may have heard of kangaroos. Kangaroos can be quite large. Wallabies look like baby kangaroos, except that they never get bigger. They can be sort of like from knee height up to about hip height. Technically it's a different animal to a kangaroo. They're like dwarf kangaroos. That's the best way to explain it. And so he brought some over, 4 different varieties, and had them in his private zoo on the island, and they were allowed out and all sorts of stuff like that. Well, he's long gone. So is his zoo, and so have a lot of the extra buildings and other things that were on the island that he set up. We still have the wallabies, some of them, and they're pests. If you live on the island anywhere near where his area was, you don't expect to have a garden because they eat it. There's not a lot of diversity in the plant life in that particular part of the island when you move away from the nurtured gardens that we have, that the historic building has around it, that has fenced off grounds so the wallabies can't get to it. Because they eat all the fresh green shoots that come up from the ground. And so a lot of the plants that are growing there are things like tea tree, manuka, which it's a great plant, but in the wild, when you don't have other animals that eat other native trees that are going to grow up, you get a lot more variety. So you don't just have manuka. The area where there's lots of wallabies, it's almost entirely manuka. There's no diversity there because they keep eating the fresh shoots that grow up from any seeds that drift in from other areas. And so they've actually ruined the ecology in that part of it. And so he had a whole lot of other creatures there. And it's the fact that these things do so well because of it's not particularly hot. It's not hugely overheated area of New Zealand. It's nice. It doesn't get too cold. We get frost a few times a year, and that's about it. We don't get lots and lots of snow or ice or anything, so it doesn't get too cold. Doesn't kill off a lot of animals that like particularly tropical conditions. Plants grow really well because we get enough rain. We don't have really dry climate. We have a reasonable level of humidity, which means that plants' seeds germinate and then grow well. All this sort of stuff. We get warmth, we get the water, but we also get a little bit of cool, not too much. And so you get plants like this one here, Morning Glory, and then there's another version of it, Convolvulus, which is a pale pink, same shaped flowers, but there's pale pink like the colour in the centre of the flower there. Convolvulus is worse, and it just goes everywhere, and it grows up and over things, and it winds its see these stems here, they're all twisted around each other. It does that around other plants as well, and it can choke them. And so we have there are wonderful plants that you can grow in a garden, but they're not allowed in New Zealand because we've had them in New Zealand and they are invasive and they take over and they choke out the native plants that we do have and all this sort of thing. So yeah, that's the sort of thing that happens. But this is a Morning Glory. They're gorgeous. They're these beautiful you can see one in the background back there. It's a little bit out of focus, and it's this trumpet shape. And the flower itself is probably about, I'll hold it next to my head so you can see, between my fingers, that's about as wide as the flower usually is. But they're this intense purpley blue, sometimes more blue, sometimes more purple. So that's Morning Glories. And so in the story, Dream Girl had discovered a Morning Glory flower, and she'd never seen one before, and she was just absolutely enraptured, delighted by it, which is why I was telling you all that stuff, why we don't have them in New Zealand. I am going to find the next picture in our story though and get it ready. It's not one that I'm going to be showing you just yet. I don't know where that comes in the story yet. So yeah, if you haven't been here before, this is pretty typical. I tend to explain a whole lot of extra stuff along the way. Some of it's because of life experience, some of it's because we do things a bit differently in New Zealand, and it's very normal for us, but it's not necessarily for other people. It's just the way it is. It's cool. It's quite cool to be able to actually have such a wide variety of life experiences that we can all learn from. And that's one of the things I love about streaming is I actually get to know so many people all over the world. I love technology for that, is the fact that we can connect with people in other places, even in other time zones, without having to pay for big toll calls and we can incidentally get to know people instead of having to go out of our way to intentionally get to know one person. And put a lot of time into doing that without necessarily knowing whether we're going to want to keep on spending time with them like a random stranger. You can get to know people and then choose to actually spend more time with them. Anyway, we'll carry on with the story. So, now I have to find it on the page. Sorry. She had never seen a Morning Glory before. She gazed at its petals of heavenly blue with their veinings of silver and lilac. That probably wasn't the best version to show you, was it? Heavenly blue is meant to be the lighter blue version. Veinings of silver and lilac and the fine mist of dew that lay like pearls about its throat, and her lips trembled with a pleasure that was almost pain. Her eyes were wide and her cheeks aglow like poppies. "You darling," she whispered to the flower. The others nodded. "Yes, that is like the Dream Girl," they said. "She loves beauty, so we must certainly take her to the Valley of Delight." That night, the Dream Girl felt herself gently lifted from her sleep and wrapped in a cloak of wonderful warmth and lightness. Then the magic wings were bound about her shoulders with a spell, and she woke up and knew she could fly. She rose into the air and flew out through the open window into the garden. "Come with us," said the fairies, and she floated easily beside them, singing a little high song of delight as her great soft wings bore her through the night. The scent of mignonette and stocks came up from the garden. Somebody can look mignonette up, or mignonette. It's, I should know what it is. It's not stocks, it's something else. mignonette. But it has this wonderful, nice smell. And I'm trying to think if it's in the daisy family. I can't remember, actually. The scent of mignonette and stocks came up from the garden, and the trees stood dark and feathery, and bats wheeled here and there, chasing the silver moths. On she went with the fairies, over the wood and far across the land, with the bright stars above and the dim fields beneath, until suddenly they came to a high hill. Over the hill they dropped, and then, "This is the Valley of Delight," said Dream Away softly. The valley was filled with light, a strange soft light, different from moonlight or sunlight. The dream girl saw that it came from thousands upon thousands of glittering pointed stars that lay round the valley. They climbed the slopes, they crowned the peaks, they gleamed from every hollow, they edged the little stream that wound along the valley floor. The light that they gave was so golden and sparkling that it made the dream girl laugh aloud with pleasure as she passed through it. She flew slowly down the valley side. Its slopes were set so thickly with blooming flowers that no earth had room to show between them. At first they were like the flowers of the garden, but soon they grew strange and more beautiful, until the dream girl held her breath with wonder and happiness, and could not sing nor speak. For these were fairy flowers, made by magic and placed here by the fairies to beautify their valley. There were shapes and scents and colours here more delicate and exquisite than any in the gardens of the mortals, and among them gleamed the golden stars, lighting up their petals till they shone like precious gems. Page 2, that's what I was trying to find. Below the flowers there were banks of emerald ferns and mosses so fine and marvellous that it was plain they too were fairy growths, and between the banks a little stream of diamond-clear water ran over a bed of polished rubies and sapphires and opals. Lovely. It flung its spray on the nodding ferns and mosses as it passed, and it sang a song so sweet that the dream girl could have cried with joy. Up and down the lovely banks she hovered, such a flood of happiness in her heart as she had never felt before. She could not speak, but the fairies saw that again her eyes were wide, and her cheeks aglow like poppies. The radiance of her face was thanks enough for them. Up and down she floated. Never, never could she leave this feast of beauty, this unearthly song that made her heart beat high. But presently the fairies touched her hands with theirs. "Come," they said, "your time is almost at an end." "Oh, must I go?" she cried. "Yes, you must go," they told her, "but 3 times a year. We shall come to you and bind your wings upon you with a spell, and for a few hours you shall fly as you have flown tonight." "And you will bring me here?" And we will bring you here," they replied, well pleased with her joy in their dear Valley of Delight. And so, I don't know if you can hear that, but I think a helicopter just went overhead. I'm just watching the sound bar. That's why I paused for a minute. So up through the glowing light they went, past the rainbow colours of the flowers and out into the darkness of the world. Swiftly they flew and far, over the dim fields and the trees of the wood, till they came to the quiet garden and the open window. Soon the dream girl was lying in her little white bed, and the fairies were carrying her magic wings back to the gentlest one. "We will come for you again." They whispered as they flew off. "We will come again." And 3 times a year they come for her, and 3 times a year she spends her few hours of rapture in the Valley of Delight. Isn't that lovely? Don't have to have anything particularly intense event-wise happening. Stories can be like that. They can be gentle and delightful. So that's the end of that chapter. The next chapter is called The Enchanted City, which I shall read in a moment, but I'm going to have a drink of water because my throat's a bit dry, and then I'm going to have a snack. So you can quickly go and get yours too, if you didn't have them already. Right, time for my speculars. They are crunchy and you can probably hear me eating them. Sorry. No, this is not an ASMR channel, but if this works for you, that's okay. I'm just checking to see if there's anything I've forgotten that somebody's written about in Discord, because occasionally I forget something and they try to remind me. At least I remembered to check this time. I don't always. Right. Now I've got to get the the biscuit out of my teeth. I'm just looking to see if I can find the invite link in case anyone did want to do that puzzle. And I'll paste it again in case they've just arrived, because Twitch has a way of showing you not much more than just what you saw when you arrived. You can't scroll up past when you arrived. Which is the one downside of some aspects of Twitch. It's unlike when people put a comment on a video on YouTube. You can look back at it. It's cool. But this is alright. So if you want to play with the jigsaw puzzle that's up there, what you do is you click on that link, and then I think you have to give yourself a name. You can just whatever. Coleslaw puts Q because that's in the start of their name, and uses that as their name when they're playing puzzles. And then you can drag those puzzle pieces around and put them together. They snap together when you get them to the right place, and then you can move any ones that have snapped together to a different place to get them out of the way or whatever. But you don't have to, just if you would like to, that's all. So I'm going to carry on reading now that I have had some refreshment. Right, we are reading The Dream Girl's Garden by Edith Howes, and this is the Enchanted City. And I'm Jev, and I'm reading for you. The Dream Girl's garden was close beside a great city. Okay. I have always guessed that the story is set in England, even though the author, with some of her books, very specifically wrote. Sorry, my hair is bothering me. Very specifically wrote about parts of New Zealand. Yeah, it's being weird. Specifically wrote about some aspects of New Zealand. A lot of ones like this story seem to be set in England. Just the type of descriptions of countryside that are used. I haven't yet come across anything that says other. She was born in England, but she did actually live and work most of her life in New Zealand. So we'll carry on anyway. So the Dream Girl's garden was close beside a great city. Sometimes the fairies would take a short flight over the houses and into the streets. Always they came back shocked and sorrowful. Those poor humans, they would exclaim to one another. Why must they live herded together like that? Those dreadful streets with no gardens in them, row after row of dreary, ugly houses, and row after row of dreary, ugly shops. Don't the humans know any better? Don't they love clean air and light and grass and flowers as we do? Have they never learned that beauty brings them happiness? I should like to teach them that, Honeybell said thoughtfully. If they could understand the happiness of beauty just once, in other words, they would be changed by this perception. But they are so many and we are so small, and they can neither see us nor hear us. Their chief man might do much, said Pearlican. Can we make him understand? Honeybell shook her head. I know him, she replied. He would only say, think of the money it would cost. Politicians. That dreadful money of theirs, it spoils everything, cried Goldie Top. All of these voices we're hearing are the fairies in the garden. Be happy, oh, be happy all the way, sang Robin, flying off. Why worry about the human folk? Honeybell had been thinking. There is the chief man's wife, she said. She loves beauty as the dream girl loves it. And she is always sorry for those who cannot have it around them. Something might be done through her. I know. Let us take her to our Valley of Delight as we took the dream girl, cried Swift. She might get an idea from that by which she might make beauty for the humans. Swift, that is a good thought. Excuse me. Sorry, just got something in my throat. Right. Swift, that is a good thought. We'll take her, said Honeybell. They borrowed the magic wings again, and that night they fastened them to the shoulders of the chief man's wife, and she flew in the Valley of Delight as the dream girl had flown. In the morning, when she awoke, she lay with shining eyes and smiling lips for a while, then rose and dressed and went to find her husband. I have had a glorious dream, she said. I dreamt that I flew through the most beautiful valley that ever could be imagined. It was so lovely that it filled my heart with joy, a joy that has not left it even yet. The sides of the valley were covered with fairy flowers and ferns and mosses of more exquisite shapes and colours and scents than are ever seen on earth. And among them and around them glowed 1,000,000 stars. It was the light from these stars that made me most happy. Oh, I could not tell you how happy it made me. It was a magic light. It went into my heart and made it sing with joy, as if a sweet bird sat there. And now I cannot rest till I have given a little of such happiness to the people of our town, the poor people who see so little beauty and know so little of its worth. A prince is coming to visit us. Let us make the city beautiful to welcome him. Let us flood it with light and colour. Let us make it so lovely that the people may walk happily in it and hear a bird sing in their hearts. Let us make them forget for one short week the dullness of their lives and the dreariness of their airless homes. Beauty will make them happy, and happiness will make them good. Think of the money it would cost, said her husband. So one of those fairies did know him fairly well. She smiled. I knew you would say that, she said, but I have plenty of money, and some of it shall be used for this plan of mine. Talk it over with the city managers and tell them I will share the cost. So the lady won her way. The managers followed her plan, and the city was made beautiful for its welcome to the prince. It was made happy with flags and flowers, and green with palms and branches from the woods, so that even by day it was splendid to look upon. But it was at night, when the people had finished their work and were free to walk happily, that it was to be the most beautiful. The first night came. As darkness fell, the fairies in Dream Girl's garden saw a sudden radiance streaming from the city through the trees. Ah, they said. Ah, it is ready, and they rose in the air to look. Against the soft blackness of the sky there rose the tall towers and spires and domes of the city, all outlined with glowing light, some rose, some gold, some ruby, and the air above was a lake of light and colour from the buildings and the streets. It is well done, said the fairies. It is almost as beautiful as our own Valley of Delight, and they flew to get a nearer view. The humans, too, were flocking to the streets. At the first radiance they had drawn sharp breaths of wonder and delight. Now they walked beneath such loveliness of light as they had never seen before. Festoons of coloured globes, lit from within, roofed the streets from side to side, outlined the great stone buildings from floor to floor until they reached the roof far up against the sky, spangled the palms and boughs and brilliant flowers. Huge stars of golden lights blazed here and there in lovely shapes, and welcoming words flashed out in dazzling blue and green and violet. Silken lanterns swung from crimson awnings. White hidden lights lit up the stone of the buildings until it gleamed like alabaster. Up and down the streets the people moved, walking happily. "It is wonderful, wonderful," they exclaimed to one another. "It is a fairyland. Our city is enchanted. Ugliness has disappeared at the touch of a magic wand, and nothing shows but beauty." They brought their children out and showed them all the splendour. From high balconies musicians played on their instruments, and along the streets went bands of sweet-voiced youths, singing the songs of their country, each taking his own part. All was gaiety and laughter and delight, and above, unseen, flew the fairies from the dream girl's garden, smiling at the happiness below. For many nights the people walked in the enchanted city, hearing a bird sing in their hearts, and forgetting the dullness of their lives and the dreariness of their homes. Like innocent children they laughed and chatted, and did no hurt to anyone. Beauty made them happy, and happiness made them good. And when the loveliness of colour and light was gone again, they had still the glowing memory, and they tried to nourish beauty in their homes. And that's the end of that chapter. Yay, no terrible disasters. Sorry. I'll read the next chapter in a moment. Right, the next chapter. The Dream Girl's Garden by Edith Howes. The Treasures of the Earth. It was holiday time, and the Golden Girl had come to play with the Dream Girl in her garden. So we've got little nicknames for the different girls in the story. We've got the Dream Girl. She's got a friend called the Golden Girl. We've just had her name mentioned. And another one that we've had before is the Play Girl. So we'll see what this one's going to bring with her. It was holiday time, and the Golden Girl had come to play with the Dream Girl in her garden. She was a little half-Spanish cousin from Central America, and they called her the Golden Girl because of her skin and eyes. Her skin was gold and cream, and her eyes were golden brown. Mummy had been reading a book in the garden, and had left it face downwards on the seat for a few minutes while she went to cut roses for the vases. The Dream Girl, who had a passion for books, lifted up this one to see what it was like. "We can only find the treasures of earth if we begin the search while we are young," she slowly read out. Wonder what the book is her mother's reading. Some inspirational thing, probably. "I wonder what that means, the treasures of the earth." The Golden Girl thought for a moment. "It means gold," she said. "Gold comes out of the earth, and it is the greatest treasure we can find." "Is it?" asked the Dream Girl. "Of course it is. Why, if we had plenty of gold, we could buy everything we want. Oh, I wish I had tons and tons of gold. Then I could buy the loveliest things in the world. Why, we could have boxes and boxes and boxes of sweets, a whole shop full of them, all to ourselves, and we could have a little house of our own out here in the garden with pink velvet carpets and pink silk curtains. And we could have a real train of our own, and ponies, and a little carriage with blue velvet cushions and silver harness, and oh, just everything we wanted. Wouldn't it be lovely? I do wish we could find some gold. I am sure it is the greatest treasure of the earth." A tiny ripple of sound ran through the garden. You might have thought it was a sudden little wind making music among the leaves and flowers, but it was the fairies laughing. They were listening to the Golden Girl and were much amused at her remarks. "Poor human, how little she knows," cried Robin. "Come away. There is a new carnation out, and the air around it is rich with scent." "Do you know carnations as a flower? Shall I find you a picture of one? They do have quite strong fragrance, don't they?" carnations look a little like this. Let's find you a nice picture. Save the image. Sorry, yes, there was somebody just walked into the room downstairs. Which is what you were hearing. They were rattling. Mainly rattling the lunchbox. They were washing it out. So these are carnations. And they have kind of a sweet, spicy smell, is how I've always thought of it. A little bit like cinnamon and cloves. I'm not quite sure why, but that's how my brain reminds me of what they smell like. So these are carnations, and they have sort of like a silvery green colour to their stems and leaves. And they used to be something that you'd see quite often in floral arrangements, so that you had a nice smell in the house from them. So that's what those are. Those are carnations. And so that's what he's distracting everybody with, by saying, let's go and have a look at the new flower that's opened up, the carnation that's opened up. There is a new carnation out, said Robin, and the air around is rich with scent. That's probably the best way to describe it. It's very rich. I shall stay, said Bluebell. Perhaps I can show the Golden Girl some of the real treasures of the earth. The Golden Girl was talking still. We ought to look for gold now, if we must begin while we are young, she was saying. Come on, let's dig in the garden and see if we can find some. There might be a whole mine under these flower beds. You never know. That's a different way of thinking about it. I'm trying to get ready an image for you that's meant to be coming up, and I don't think I've got that one. I should have. Oh, there's a picture I missed. It's a lovely one. I'm just trying to think of how I can get it available for you quickly without going off and doing lots of other things. I think it's actually the one that's used in the cover of the book up there, but there's a picture within the book that's a lot clearer. I'm going to see if I can take a photo of it for you and then load it up to my computer. Right. And then download it on my computer, because they don't automatically talk to each other, unfortunately. Right. So yeah, have a look at that one there. See if you can make out the picture, and I will see if I can give you a clearer one. Actually, I might just see if I can make it slightly clearer first. Might be a better idea. Hey, that would be a good idea. There's the picture. Let's edit it on my phone before I pass it off to my computer. It's not quite what I usually do. Adjust, brightness, contrast. That's better. Saturation slightly. And crop. So you don't have distracting bits around the edges. Maybe I should have done them all this way. This is looking like it's actually come out better than I was expecting. And I shall send that to myself again. Nearly there. Sorry about that. That one. Send. Now I should be able to pick that up from here, save it, import it into the other thing, and then you can see it. I don't know how I missed it because I actually went through the whole book and scanned all of these pictures so that I could share them with you. So for some strange reason, I actually missed that one particular picture. I remember looking at it. Maybe I was... Maybe someone was talking to me and I got distracted. That's not unusual. I mean, honestly, it's not really that unusual. Save image. Save it to here. Yes, that folder. And I'm just going to shut this door. There. They may have actually moved through to another part of the house, so that's good. They're talking on the phone about some piece of tool that needs fixing, I think. New picture, where is it? That one. There it is. Open it up. Resize. And it should be a lot clearer than the one on the book cover. There you go. See? That's the one. There's a fairy and she's sitting holding on to these flowers here with strings. I think that she uses these strings here as bell pulls for the bell-shaped flowers. Looks like she's sitting on some mushroom or toadstool. Anyway. Right. So... come on, let's dig in the garden and see if we can find some. There might be a whole mine under these flower beds. You never know. Oh, and I had to take photos of these things and do scans for these things and stuff because this book is not available online. Thankfully, I have a copy of it myself. The spade is too heavy, said the dream girl. It makes me ache. I saw 2 trowels in the tool house, said the golden girl. We can dig with them. They ran to the tool house, found the trowels. Those are like little toy spades, you know, the one that you use. It's just got a handle and then it's got the spade end on it, just but small. You use them for pot plants and stuff like that, or if you're working in a vegetable garden, just in close. They ran to the tool house, found the trowels, and ran again, all excitement, to a corner of the garden that had been freshly dug. So that's going to make it easy. This will be soft and easy for our trowels, they told each other. Like, if there was really gold there, wouldn't somebody else have already found it? Oh well, we'll carry on. They dug and dug, making deep, narrow holes. Not a gleam of gold was to be seen as yet, nothing but the earth thrown out in brown heaps, with here and there a frightened worm wriggling away into darkness and safety again after the destruction of its home. The dream girl soon wearied of the work. Sorry, I'm just trying to find whereabouts this picture comes into the story, because I've got this picture up, but we haven't yet got to that part of the story. Oh well. The dream girl soon wearied of the work. There is no gold here, she said, and I am sure there won't be any if we dig all day. And she wandered off to the swing. The golden girl laboured on. Deeper and deeper she went into the earth until her little arm was almost hidden in the hole. At last she sat back, tired and disappointed. There's nothing but ground and worms, she said, just silly old ground and worms. She tapped idly with her trowel at the sides of a little heap of the soft earth, and it clung together and made a sort of wall, like being at the beach making sandcastles. A sudden idea came to her. She set to work patting and packing and smoothing and adding until she made the 4 thick walls of a little square house, with openings for a door and window framed with bits of wood for firmness. How should she make the roof? Earth would not do, for it would fall in. She remembered a square of stiff red paper in the playroom. She ran for it and creased it across the middle and pinned it down to the corners of the house with small splinters of sharp wood. It made a splendid peaked roof, and when the open ends were filled in with earth, the little house looked as real as could be. The golden girl stood up and gazed at it with her head on one side, then suddenly jumped and danced for joy. Her eyes shone now and her cheeks were flushed like roses. "It's lovely, lovely," she cried. "Oh, I feel so happy. I have never been so happy before. It's a darling little house, and I made it all myself out of my own head. There was a sudden silvery peal of tiny bells. There was a sudden silvery peal of tiny bells, and a voice behind her said, "And when you have made a thing yourself out of your own head, you have found one of the treasures of the earth. It is far better than gold." The golden girl had jumped round, and for the first time she saw one of the fairies of the garden that the dream girl often talked about. It was Bluebell, ringing her campanulas with a silken rope, because she was so glad that the golden girl... Oh, sorry, I think I need to give you the link again. There you go, try that link. I forgot to give you the correct new one in the command. Try that, Coastal. And thank you for following, Dan. It was Bluebell ringing her campanulas. Campanulas are bluebells or Scottish bluebells or one of those ones. These look to me like Scottish bluebells. Bellflowers. With a silken rope, because she was so glad that the golden girl had found one of the treasures of the earth. Great, glad it works. Thanks, Q. Gold would not have given you that lovely happiness in your heart, she said, and next moment she was gone. Just like this. Gone. Magic. The golden girl looked and looked for her, but she could not see her again. She ran to the dream girl. "I have seen a fairy," she cried. "I have seen a fairy. Oh, I made the loveliest little house. Come and see it. I made it all by myself." The dream girl was sitting on the swing, but she was not swinging. Indeed, she was scarcely moving. Her eyes were as bright as those of the golden girl, and her whole face was lit up with happiness. "I can't come just yet," she said. "I am looking at the leaves." A few yards away, the wind was lifting the leaves of a gum tree, and the sun was shining on their glossy sides. Every leaf flashed and gleamed as if it were washed in a liquid light. Light seemed to dance on every surface, to play and leap and sway about the tree as if it were a living, lovely thing. The dream girl drew a deep breath of delight. "It makes me so happy when I look at it," she said softly. "I am so glad for you," said Bluebell's voice. There she was, sitting on a blade of grass, quite near. "When you see the beauty in the world so plainly that it makes you happy, then you have found one of the treasures of the earth," she went on. "It is far better than gold." And again she was gone. It was at that very moment that the playgirl came running down the garden path, and the dream girl sprang up from the swing with a cry of joy and ran to meet her. Because it was holiday time, they had not seen each other for nearly 2 weeks. And they were very, very fond of one another, so they hugged and kissed each other over and over again and made funny little noises of delight. "Daddy brought me in the car to see you because the time seems so long without you," said the playgirl. "He says I may stay till he calls for me." They hugged each other again, their faces beaming with happiness. Bluebell showed herself once more. "When you love each other so dearly as that, then you have found another of the treasures of the earth," she said. "It is far better than gold. You need not dig for treasures. You will find them all about you in the world if you learn to see them." There you go. Oh, it's so good to see that the puzzle is actually working, not just the link working. So welcome, Q. Great to have you here. Lovely to have the puzzles pieces moving around. And anybody else who wants to can click on the link and also do the puzzle as part of it. Unless you want to find some yourself and do them elsewhere without showing them on the stream, that's fine too. Right, I'm going to read one more chapter. It is a little bit late for me, but I am actually going to carry on and read one more chapter. The Woodling. The Dream Girl's Garden by Edith House, and this chapter is called The Woodling, and I'm guessing it's something to do with a creature maybe a fairy creature from the woods. Autumn came walking through the garden. Her face was quiet and serene, yet where she laid her fingertips the leaves turned red hot all at once, causing the fairies to rise in haste from their seats upon them. Here and there a leaf sought coolness on the ground when she had passed, so there grew to be a thinness in the hedges and peepholes through the trees, the leaves falling off in autumn. Now the woodling could see the fairies more easily than before. He had grown pale with lurking in the deepest shade all the summer long, peering through the thick-set boughs and hedges, trying to follow with his eyes the merry, pretty doings of the garden fairies. He loved them, every one. He longed to live with them and be one of them, but he was only a wild woodland thing, shy and ignorant. He knew his place was out here where everything was wild like himself, yet he could not keep away from the garden hedge, could not help adoring the fairies within. Best of all he liked the one he called the Lady One. She was always so daintily dressed, so charming in her manners, so prettily sweet to everyone, that he could not tear his eyes away from her when she was near, and it was by her that he was caught peeping in. Wonder what's going to happen. Oh, we'll find out, won't we? It was a lovely autumn morning, still and sunny, and the Lady One was brushing her golden hair in her bedroom of rose petals. 2 big leaves that hid her room had fallen away when autumn passed, and as she was fond of fresh air, the windows were all open, so the woodling could see her plainly. When she had finished making a delightful hanging curl of her hair, she suddenly looked up and saw the woodling staring in at her. "Oh," she cried, "how rude of you to peep in at the windows!" "Is it? Is it rude of me?" The woodling flushed with shame. "I didn't know," he said. "I will be better." And he moved round till he could look in at the door. "That is worse than ever," cried the Lady One. "Oh, don't you know any manners at all?" "No, I don't know any manners at all," he answered sadly. "But oh, I would learn so gladly if you would let me come in and be taught." She looked hard at him. "You are a woodling," she said. "You are not a garden fairy, so why do you want to come into the garden?" "I don't quite know why it is," he said, "but I watch you every day and I long to come in and be one of you. Perhaps if you taught me my manners. You are so beautiful and sweet and good." The Lady One couldn't help being a little pleased at that, of course, and he looked so pleadingly at her, and was so shy and yet so bold. He certainly did need a few lessons in manners, whether he was ever to live in the garden or not. "Well," she said, "I will teach you. Come to the tree of red berries in the east corner of the garden when the sun is halfway up the sky, and I will give you your first lesson." Sorry, itchy nose. "No, that will be your second lesson, for here is your first. It is rude to stare in at a lady dressing, either through the windows or the door. Now go." The woodling flew off. Sorry, itchy still. The woodling flew off, but he was gleeful now instead of ashamed. He went straight to the Careful One. "Lend me some clothes, Careful One," he cried. "I am to go into the garden, and the Lady One is to teach me my manners. Lend me some clothes, for they all wear clothes in there." That's probably a good idea, yeah. The Careful One was another woodling, as undressed as the first, who had nothing on but the skin, for that is how the woodlings live. When they are cold, they wrap themselves in their big wings and curl into a hollow tree. Oh, sorry. I don't know why my nose is so itchy today. Suddenly. We've done really well up until now without itchy noses. Here we go. When they are cold, they wrap themselves in their big wings and curl into a hollow tree. But the Careful One was called the Careful One because he had a habit of storing up the things he found instead of leaving them lying about as most woodlings would have done. And it was well known that he had in his cupboard some of the fairies' clothing, things the careless ones had left about when they bathed in the round pond in the garden, things that they had left behind. How he got them nobody knew, for he was never seen in the garden. "They are too fine in there for me," he would say. "The wind blew the things over the hedge," he always said, but the woodlings had their doubts. He was such a fellow for poking about, especially when people were asleep. Anyway, he had clothes stored away, and clothes were what the woodling wanted. He begged the careful one to lend him all he had. "You are a silly to go into the garden," said the careful one. "It will not suit you at all." But he opened his cupboard door, and there on the top shelf were the clothes. He pulled them out, and together they somehow managed to fit them all on the woodling. It took a long time and made a great deal of talk, for neither of them was quite sure where the things went on. There was a blue bathing cap. That was certainly meant for the head, for it fitted there so well. So on the woodling's head it went. Then there was a big white ruffle which just met round his neck. Next came 3 blue ribbon bands, each finished with a big rosette. These they tied on all sorts of places till they found that just below the knee and just below the shoulder were the best fitting places for them. So 2 went on the woodling's legs and 1 on his left arm. All that was left was a pair of white kid gloves. "Those are evidently meant for the hands," said the careful one. "The long tubes on the end of each can fit nothing but your fingers. It seems to me, too, that there are as many tubes as fingers on your hand." That's a good bit of deduction. He counted the tubes, 5. Then he counted the woodling's fingers, 5. "It is proved," he said. "These clothes are for the hands." They had much difficulty in getting them on, for the tubes would go on the wrong fingers, but at last the woodling's hands were completely covered, and he felt very much dressed indeed. Never before had he been so glorious. Surely he was fine enough for even the garden fairies. He sat on a twig to wait till the sun was halfway up the sky. He would not leap the boughs, or turn somersaults, or make wheels of himself as he usually did, for fear of hurting his clothes, so the time seemed long. But at last the sun was exactly at the halfway mark, and off the woodling shot to the garden. Yes, that sound is me turning pages, real physical pages. And off the woodling shot to the garden. The lady one would be waiting for him in the tree of red berries. She was not waiting for him. Her hat and scarf and fan hung on a branch, as if she had just come in from some pleasant outing. She herself sat on the west side of the tree, looking into the garden, and by her side sat her fairy playmate. They talked earnestly, their heads and wings together, for there was to be a dance that night, and they were both on the committee. Sorry, I'm just going to check here. I think this might be where there's another picture to come in, and I'm going to check to see if I've got the right one for it. I'm not sure. No, there isn't. Sorry, just checking. It's a little bit odd the way the pictures fit in this book. They were both on the committee because there was to be a dance that night. There was much to be arranged, and her back was toward the woodling, so no wonder she forgot him and his lesson. As for him, although he had no manners, he felt it would be wrong to interrupt their conversation, so he sat himself down on the branch where hung her fan and scarf and hat, and there he waited and waited, dolefully eyeing those beautiful clothes and wondering especially where she wore the fan. You know how slowly the moments move along when you are waiting, 100 times as slowly as when you are playing. That is how it was with the woodling. He got dolefuller and dolefuller. He was tired of sitting on the branch and waiting, and of course he had no manners at all. So perhaps it is not to be wondered at that when the lady one's playmate did at last fly away, and when the lady one did at last remember the lesson and come to look for the woodling, he did not meet her very cheerfully. "Oh, Woodling, I nearly forgot you," she cried. "It is bad manners to be cross when a lady keeps you waiting," she added severely as she saw his look. But next moment she smiled so sweetly that the Woodling was happy again. "Now I will give you your lesson," she said, and he sat up and fixed his eyes on her face, ready to remember every word. "I have such a stupid head," he remarked, "but perhaps if I say everything 5 times over, I shall not forget it. The first thing to remember is always say please when you ask for a thing, and thank you when it is given to you." He repeated it 5 times. "Oh, that is easy," he cried joyfully. "I can remember it quite well. Please when you ask for a thing, and thank you when it is given to you. There, I have it off by heart." The next is always say, "I beg your pardon," when you don't hear what is said, and "sorry" when you hurt anyone. "But I always hear what is said," cried the Woodling. "I have such long ears, you see." "Never mind, say your lesson," she commanded, so he said that 5 times over. The next is always rise when a lady comes into the room and offer her your leaf to sit on. "Always rise when a leaf comes into the room and offer her your lady to sit on," was the way the Woodling repeated it. For he was trying to think, and when he tried to think, his words always went into the wrong places. I know what that feels like. "Why?" he asked suddenly. "There are no whys in the lesson," said his teacher. "Say that properly," and he had to, 5 times. The next is always lift your hat from your head when you meet a lady walking or flying. "But I never wear a hat," he cried. "That is, I suppose this is what you call a hat, but I don't wear it on other days." "You wear it on your head," she said, "and you must wear a hat so that you can take it off. To ladies. What is the good of lessons if you are not going to do the things I tell you? Though why you wear a bathing cap for a hat I don't know, nor why you are half dressed like that." The Woodling's joy went out of him. He had felt so fine, but now it seemed that he was all wrong. "I put the clothes on to come to you," he said humbly. "I thought I had to." "Clothes," she said. "Do you call those clothes? Why, Woodling, you will have to wear ever so much more than that if you are to learn manners and come into the garden." The Woodling gazed at her anxiously. "Lady one," he said, "how much must I wear?" "Oh, a whole suit," she said, "all over you." "All over me?" The Woodling looked dazed. "I couldn't. I simply couldn't." Then with a rush all his woes came out. "Lady one, this thing on my head has been growing hotter and hotter every minute, and the tubes on my fingers tighter and tighter, and the thing on my neck has been choking me ever since I put it on, and now you tell me I must wear more. It can't be done. I should die if I had to live in clothes, and that is a thing no Woodling has been known to do," he finished proudly. "You can't come into the garden without clothes," she said. "I know," he answered a little sadly. Next moment his face brightened with the thought of his free woodland life. "Thank you for the manners," he said, "and please may I peep over the hedge at you sometimes?" "Yes, but not when I'm dressing," she said, and off he went. He pulled the clothes off on his way to the careful one. "Put them away," he cried. "I never want to wear them again. The garden life is not for me." "I told you so," said the careful one. And that's the end of the chapter. Just like that. What an odd little chapter that one was. Oh, goodness me. I hadn't really thought about the fact that the fairies are always in this book, are always have lots of clothes on. But yeah, that makes sense. Oh, goodness. What an odd chapter. I think that the Woodling is quite... It's much healthier for him if he just carries on with his normal lifestyle, living in the wood, doing what he does. He would find it so boring and so restrictive living in the garden and having to live the way the fairies do. They don't mind because that's what's normal for them, I suppose. How peculiar that one was. That's better. Hadn't realised. I can't have been drinking enough this morning. I'm usually doing quite well at this time of day. in terms of how much my mouth and my throat get dry. But sometimes it just sort of like, and I think it's just because I didn't drink enough today. Ah, well. Right, so thank you so much for everybody being here. I am going to just, my nose, itchy. Sorry about that. I'm going to carry on chatting for a little bit longer because I'm pretty sure that Q is working on this puzzle. Yes, definitely working on that puzzle. No, just says Q left the game. Oh, okay. If that's enough, if you don't want to do any more, that's fine by me. So don't forget, have a look at the links below on my Twitch page and see who else in Codex is online at the moment. I don't know if anyone else is online at the moment, but even if no one is online at the moment, if you go and have a look at those links and give them a follow and keep an eye out for when they go online next and all that sort of stuff, you may actually discover some more stories and stuff like that. Oh no, I'm so sorry about that, Q. Q's saying, having connection issues, it seems. Storm's on its, oh dear. I hope everything's safe and okay for you, aside from the fact that connection is going to do weird things. Yes, sometimes life is like that, isn't it? Thankfully, we have power. And when we run out of power here in our place with storms, because we live semi-rurally, we have a wood fire that we keep the house warm with, and it keeps the water in the water tank hot and the hot water cylinder hot. The wood fire does, which is great. We can still do that, and we can turn on the town supply water, which doesn't taste as nice, but we still get the water because we don't have to rely on an electric pump when we have a power cut. And also we have a gas cooker, so that's good. Got a good view of the lightning here from my bed, which is all right most times. Lightning, so dramatic. Great that you have a nice view, as long as it doesn't keep you awake when you're trying to sleep. Yeah. So so if you want to have some more to watch, then go and look at all the links below for Codex, other Codex readers. I'm pretty sure I already said, just giving you the link for the Discord server for Codex. So the Discord server is the Codex readers, but also the various Codex readers who are part of Codex, but also people who are not Codex readers but want to find out more about who's reading when. It's for anyone who's interested in the sort of old books that we read, to be able to chat about those together. But it's also where those of us who read, if we're doing book club, can talk about it and get organised for doing it. So this 1 day ago, a day and a half ago, they actually had book club. They do it once a month. They had it, and I was unable to be part of it, but they were doing Bartleby the Scrivener, which is a short book written by Herman Melville, having a bit of a discussion about it, different opinions about different aspects of it, things that people have learned, all that sort of stuff. Life lessons, I suppose, that sort of thing. They do that once a month. There's also a movie club, which I don't know anything about. I don't know if that really happens yet or not, but that's okay. But it's a great way to find some other readers you can follow, listen to, people to interact with, chat on Discord. So Discord, Twitch, and YouTube are 3 services that you can pay to use them, but you don't have to pay to use them. You can have a perfectly functioning system of entertainment using all 3 of those without having to pay for anything except for your own actual normal internet connection. So join the Discord server, have a look at the other Codex readers, see if there's anyone online, go and find something else to do. Not everybody just reads all the time. I just chat and read, but most of the other readers play computer games, things like that. We've got a really wide variety of people who actually are readers in the Codex group. So we've got school teachers, librarians, voice actors, audiobook narrators, and probably a bunch of other more typical normal day job type things that people do. And then what we have in common is that we read public domain books on Twitch. Don't forget, you can go over to my YouTube channel, give me a follow over there, subscribe over there, and YouTube will tell you when I put up the next story. The stories that I read here usually go up a week and a half to 2 weeks after they've been up on Twitch, because they don't stay permanently on Twitch. And catch up on some other stories. If you want some more stories to read and you don't want to watch something live, then go over to my YouTube channel, have a look through the playlists, pick a book and have a listen. And yes, there'll be lots of chat. That's just the way it works. Right, so I think that's about it. I'm not quite sure. I'm just checking to see if there's anything else I was meant to be dealing with. See who else is online. Find somebody that you want to go and have another listen to. Get to know somebody new. The NASA. Yes, Q. Thank you for mentioning that. Rocket Lab is a New Zealand American company, so it's set up by a New Zealander. It's the funding and part of the business is American, and we build small rockets and we send them into space, basically. And NASA had contracted Rocket Lab to actually put into orbit from the Earth, going out to the moon and stabilizing an orbit around the moon, a satellite unit that can be used to gather information to get ready for actually doing other things around the moon. Really exciting. It was launched from New Zealand. We watched it live online, not actually there. Yeah, it's on the coast. It's a really cool place. It's if you look on Google Maps for Mahia, Mahia, I'm just going to see if I can actually find you a map link for it, because it's actually a particular place at Mahia. And yeah, it's they launch satellites. Sometimes they do CubeSats, which are tiny little things about this big, and then the one that they just sent up to the moon is about the size of a microwave oven. They didn't have as many cameras on board the rocket just because to be able to get all the extra information that they needed to actually do it. There. That's where they are. Need to get a link for that for you. Share. That's it. Copy link. That's the one. Give you the link for it. To be able to send the amount of data that they need to back to be able to do all their calculations and everything else like that, it meant that they weren't able to put cameras on the rocket to show us the different stages of what the rocket does, which is what they usually do when they're sending something up into space for us. And we've had, there's been a secondary school that built some little satellite thingies as part of their science work that they actually sent up with on one of the Rocket Lab launches. NASA's actually used Rocket Lab for a couple of things previously, and it's what's really cool about it is because they're small rockets, literally they are small rockets. You need to go and look for photos of them. They are just amazingly small. Because they're small rockets, it means that a business, if it's got enough small satellites or whatever it is that they're sending up into space, into the upper atmosphere, whatever it is, level that they're sending it up to, it costs a little bit more for the amount of space that they're using, but they can actually have the load just for their business going up. It's not like they're just filling in an extra corner on something like a SpaceX launch or something like that, where the priority is for the big load that's being sent up to somewhere like the space station, and you just have to try and sort of, you open the door and chuck the thing out at the approximate place that they want it to go to, is what it feels like with some of the big launches. Whereas with the Rocket Lab ones, because the rocket is so small, the load is primarily just that person, that organization's load. So it's quite exciting. It's it makes it quite unique the way it functions with that. And they do 3D printing for the engines, the motors. We're at the stage now where they're practicing retrieval of certain stages of the body so that it can be reused. We're still fine tuning that, obviously. We being New Zealand, because a lot of the work's happening here. It would be really, really cool. And it's quite an amazing thing. My son collects the launch patches. He buys them off Rocket Lab after they've done a launch. They do a different design every time. They've all got intriguing names for the different launches that they do. The first one that I specifically remember was one called It's Business Time, is what the rocket was called. Because they had gone from doing test launches to this was going to be the first one that was actually a commercial launch. It was the last one of what was meant to be the test phase, but they had learnt enough from it for it to be successful to actually do their first commercial launch. And so therefore they called it It's Business Time. And each one has got a different name. Often there's a little bit of humour in the way it's named. So yeah, it's quite fun. Just the possibilities on that. And it's just, it's mind-blowing, but it's also very normal in some ways. New Zealanders tend to be quite innovative, and so Peter Beck had this idea that, we can get rockets up into space and they don't have to be these giant things that such as the Russians and the Chinese and the Americans and India and all those sort of places are doing. It's really cool. I love the way it's a stretch of the standard way of thinking about stuff. I'd like to do this. Well, why can't we? Let's see if we can figure out a way to do it. And there's a bunch of people, because the actual shell of the rocket is made out of a material called carbon fibre. And New Zealanders are famous for building carbon fibre boats, yachts, sailing vessels and motor vessels, and there's certain techniques with the material. So it's like a type of mesh that has a certain other set of chemicals that are put into it, and then it's treated in a special way, and it's actually very, very resilient, has the right sort of strength and resilience properties to it, and it was ideal for using for rockets. And so they have people who used to be making boats who are doing the carbon fibre for rockets now. Who knew? So quite a way of stretching people's minds and getting a whole lot of stuff. Just different ways of doing things. Anyway, so I'm going to sign off now, just because I think it's time for me to go and cook some dinner. So great to have you all here. I hope you've been enjoying the story and all the extra random information that I give you along the way. So that's cool. Yes, batteries. Our rockets have batteries as a very, very key component to them. It's not just once. It's this ongoing work using batteries. And the other thing about scale is, because things are so small, relatively speaking, things that are not reusable are usually small enough that the heat that comes from friction when it's descending through the atmosphere will actually burn it up, so you don't have space junk left from it, which is another really cool extra to it. So I will sign off now and see you all in 2 days' time. For those who are new here, I read 3 days a week. 3 seems to be a key number for me, doesn't it? 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 p.m. New Zealand time. And if you look on my schedule page on Twitch, that will show you what time that is for you in your time zone. You don't even have to calculate it. As long as you allow your computer or your phone to actually know where you are, you don't even have to turn location on. I think once you've actually used Twitch a few times, it will tell you what time that is in your time zone that I'm going to be reading. So thank you for being here. Loved seeing you all. Thank you so much for coming in as part of the raid. And thank you also for watching, if you're still watching over on the hosting channel, which David was organising. That was fabulous. Don't forget to check out the various other Codex readers. Say hi. get get sociable. And we'll see you all next time. Have a great few days in between, day in between. And if I don't see you next time, we'll see you another time. In the meantime, happy reading. Bye.